What happens when you put 15 radio people on a Zoom call? Well, you have an incredible discussion about radio and where it is today. Hi, I'm AC programming consultant Gary Berkowitz, and welcome to my first radio programming Zoom call. Because I respect your time, I will tell you up front, this call goes about 51 minutes, so I completely understand if you can't watch the entire call. To make it a little bit easier, in case you can't watch the whole call, I'm going to give you a summary at the end of everything that we talked about. So let's go to Roberta Solomon and Dick Irvesty and have them introduce today's panel.
But truly, two of the greatest voiceover people in the world. And it was actually Dick's idea to do the roll call on today's call. And I thought it would be great to have Dick and Roberta split it. Because I want to say on my first radio call, Dick Irvesty and Roberta Solomon were the voices of the call. So I know I'm getting gushy, so I'll stop and turn it over to Dick and Roberta now.
Roberta, ladies first. You go first, girl.
All right. A career broadcaster with over 30 years' experience in Canadian radio. Paul worked in all facets of the industry, most recently as co-owner and president of Clear Sky Radio. Please welcome Paul Larson.
Former operations manager for Scripps Radio, Tucson, VP programming iHeart Phoenix, VP AC programming at CBS Radio, legendary PD and air talent at great call letters such as KEZK, KYKY, KMXZ, WNEW, and KSWD. Give a warm February welcome to Fred Flanzer, a.k.a. Smokey Rivers.
All right, Smokey Rivers.
Smokey!
The former morning host of WJYE Buffalo and WZMX Hartford, Connecticut. Please welcome Nancy Barrow.
Welcome, Nancy.
Hey, Nancy.
Next up is Jay Myers, recognized expert in the broadcast industry and beyond, with a track record of success as a C-level and senior executive in companies as large as the Fortune 500 and as a resource and leader for small businesses. A former operator himself at companies like J-Core, remember J-Core, Clear Channel, and Adelante, Jay brings a hands-on knowledge of leadership, strategy, and operations to help executives create and execute plans to grow or to totally turn around their businesses. Welcome, Jay Myers.
Woohoo!
Welcome, Jay.
The founder and president at Blue Desk Productions, New York, and former executive director, programming and news coverage, ABC Radio Networks, New York, Andrew Kalb.
Operations manager and on-air talent, Reno Media Group in Reno, Nevada, Bill Schultz.
Right.
Hello.
And up next, operations manager, Mackenzie River Broadcasting in Eugene, Oregon, down the highway, Jeff Baird.
We go over to country radio stations and a person who advises them in a top-level situational capacity for companies like Entercom, Bonneville, Max Media, Beasley, Americom, Forever Media, Renda, Saga. And how do you say this, Joel? Is it Verstandig?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Oh,
Yep.
All righty. And others. Prior to consulting, by the way, Joel programmed and served as an on-air personality in 3 major markets, New York, Cleveland, and Pittsburgh. Joel Robb. Next, after taking a break from radio, imagine that, now back from his home studio doing afternoons at KPOW, Mark Haycock.
Afternoon drive personality, WBEB, B101.1, Entercom in Philadelphia. Please welcome Mark Shepard.
Hey, there he is.
VP Programming, McDonald Garber Broadcasting, Traverse City, Michigan, former PD, WDBD Detroit, former air talent at Pro FM in Providence, WEBE Bridgeport, and the famous 95.5 WPLJ in New York. Robbie Bridges.
Playing the role of Lauren today, who's not here, is Lou Katz. And let me
So, Lou Katz. Washington, D.C. radio personality for 47 years, wrapped up a terrestrial career in 2017 after 17 years as PMD and AMD at 97.1 Wash FM, now running Hound Radio, an AC internet radio station, and also producing weekly the At the Movies entertainment podcast. Please welcome Lou Katz.
I've spoken to a lot of you about, should we have an agenda? Should we not have an agenda? What should we be talking about? And the consensus that I got from just about everybody was, let's just kind of have a free-flowing conversation. I mean, we all have a lot in common on this call. We're all in radio, different aspects of radio. And I think it's safe to say that we are now coming up on probably the most difficult year that any of us have probably gone through, both professionally, personally. This COVID thing has just thrown all of our worlds upside down. I'm not sure I would have put money on a bet a year ago that being able to brag about getting your shot was gonna be your badge of honor. But it's just been a crazy year, and it has affected radio tremendously. I am the eternal optimist, and I do feel like, with vaccines out there now, and with affection, with the rates of COVID going down, that, maybe we're seeing the light through the tunnel a little bit. So with that in mind, go.
Gary, I have a question for you because you have the data there. I've not been privy to some of the micro analysis over the last year. Do you see that AC radio in particular has narrowed its demographic focus because the incidental listening effect at work is no longer in effect?
I don't think we have, although we might have to.
Yeah, I mean, before you would see these upsurges in 18 to 34-year-old women at work, and you're thinking, how do I process that? Are they really listening, or is this just incidental? Is this just going on because someone in the next cubicle is tuned to an AC radio station and being heard via a speaker? So my question is, has the demographic focus of adult contempt been squeezed into this tiny little core ball by COVID?
I think the answer is it probably has, but what we're really seeing is that because now people have a choice of what they listen to. It used to be like you would go into a focus group and a woman would say, well, at work we listen to 102.5 because our boss likes it and it's good for our customers, but it's not really my favorite station. Well, now what you're finding out is that these women are working out of their home offices, and if they're listening to the radio, they're listening to the station they want to listen to. Case in point, when the weekly January week 2 came out yesterday, women 25-54, Monday through Friday, 6A to 7P in Detroit is WRIF, the rock station. That never happened before.
Yeah.
So, and that's happening all over the country. It's Smokey. It's happening in Seattle. It's happening everywhere. That stations that you didn't see before popping up in at least in the female demos. The rock stations are popping. Classic rock are popping up big time.
So let me comment a little bit about, follow up on what Smokey said a little bit. So part of the issue that I've had with our industry all the time, and I could cite examples, is that we always play catch up. We're never out in front of trends. The classic one to me was, Jeff Smulyan spent 5 or 6 years of his life trying to get an FM chip into cellular phones. I had an FM radio on my cellular phone in 1998. It was a StarTAC phone, and you got this special headphone adapter on a Motorola site, converted the phone to an FM radio with 9 presets. I mean, it was the technology was right there. We didn't see where the world was going. We didn't embrace that, and things went along. I think, Smokey, your question was a really good one, but the truth of the matter is that I don't think anybody's listening to a radio publicly at work anymore. I think the radio, those that listen to radio at work, has become a personal medium. They're doing it through whether it's wireless or wired headphones to their computers or to their phones using the iHeart or the radio.com app or whatever. The whole situation has become more personal, and I think that part of what we're missing is we need to be driving that personal situation. Like, we all grew up, not all of us, but a lot of us on this call, being involved heavily in AC radio. I mean, I've been involved in AC radio, since the 80s. And now we need promos that say, hey, if your office is down the hall from your bedroom, as soon as you get in there, say, Alexa, turn on, and we need to start to make our promos more personal as everything becomes more personal.
And Roberta, I might want to just ask you, or Roberta and/or Dick, really, because you guys see a lot of copy. Roberta, have you noticed any changes in the kind of copy you're getting and what?
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of my stations are doing just that. They're directing people to their smart speakers and to how to get the station anywhere on any device. And that's been happening for some time, but it really kicked into gear with, when COVID started surging. What is happening now, which I think is really cool, is that there's an acknowledgement in the copy that I'm receiving that people are turning to radio for comfort. And I think the reason that rock stations are doing so well is because it's like familiar music to a lot of people, but that people are turning to. They want a safe space to go to, and so I'm getting a lot of. I just got some copy this morning that we're the station that. Gives you the music that you love and the entertainment we all need, and we want to be a point of positivity, in your day. And so I'm seeing a lot of copy, and also I've had a lot of feedback from my station saying we're really glad that you're our voice because you're familiar, and these are with stations that I've been with for some time. You're familiar. Our listeners know your voice, and as our staff changes and jocks are gone and then they're in a different day part, the one thing that is familiar to them is your voice. So I'm getting anecdotally and through the copy that I'm receiving that people are turning to radio, and specifically AC radio, and any music radio, for comfort and entertainment and a sense of normalcy in these crazy, chaotic times that we're living in.
Hey, if I can just jump in, because I have a little bit of a different perspective. I did not work in AC radio. I've always been on the news side, but I've worked with a lot of you guys providing content when I was at ABC, of course. And just to pick up on something Gary said and something Jay said, it seems like we're, as an industry, and I always looked at myself and my team, we were producers for all of you guys. We provided content, so we were part of every radio station that got something from ABC. We were a part of it. We took a vested interest in the success of those stations. And as an industry, we were always catching up. It was, evolving and embracing, and what Jay said earlier. But what you said earlier, Gary, about weather, and Roberta, it hasn't changed. When I got into radio in Miami in 1986, when I was still in high school, it was that excitement that people needed us. They wanted us. And it was during Hurricane Andrew in 92. We were telling people on the radio where to get water and batteries. That's as granular as it gets. That hasn't changed one bit. We just sometimes fall off the track as a group, and we say, oh, the smart speakers are coming. We may not have been as smart to realize it as quickly as we should have. And now, Roberta, you're reading the copy now, and just imagine if we would have embraced that 5 years ago or 7 years ago, some of this might be a little bit different than what we're seeing now. So it's always that, here we go. We got to keep up with it. It's exciting. And my biggest challenge is as a father of an 18-year-old, who everything he has in his life is because of radio. He doesn't listen to radio, but he listens to more audio than all of us put together.
Right.
So that's the key. They're listening to audio. We know that. It may be through a smart speaker. And if it's good, it doesn't matter where it's coming from. We just have to get to them and say, wait a second, you can get this good content tell Alexa, now everyone's Alexa probably just went off, but tell Alexa what you want and where you're going to get it from. That's the key, is reaching those people.
Yeah, and Andrew, I was on a 3-hour call this morning with one of my groups. I mean, I suggested that we've got to have 4 impressions an hour of Alexa, explaining to people that we are, number one, on Alexa, and number two, how do you get us? And that was a tough sell. It wasn't easy.
No, I think
It's a great. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Joel.
I was going to say, most people who buy an Alexa or a Google Home unit, or even this new Apple one that's coming out, they did not buy it as a radio or to be a radio. That is not why they bought this device. So it's really up to us to train our listeners when they're listening in the car or at work or wherever, to tell them, hey, I bet you didn't even think, I'm trying to work on some copy that's really sort of that straightforward. Hey, you have this Alexa thing. Did you know you could use it as a radio, like a radio? Really? And just, oh yeah, okay. And then we have to teach them. I think we've done actually a decent job, because we are seeing the stats on radio listening on Alexa coming up. But I also, and Google Home, but we have a ways to go for sure.
I couldn't agree with Joel any more of what he just said, because we had a conversation with our group here, because Joel consults our country station, and we were talking about how do we train our listeners to use these smart speakers. And Gary, you were on this call too, and basically the consensus that we came up with was having all our key talent, either morning shows or high profile afternoon talent, do short informational videos saying, hey, I've got one of these Alexa devices. You could hear our radio station on this Alexa device if you say, hey, Alexa, enable the 106.9 More FM skill. And then, of course, the radio station pops up. And if you have a quick, short informational video that you could post on your website or your social media, that's really impactful, and it's quick.
I have a programming question. I have been on the air since I was 22. So this year has been hard because I was let go in April. And trying to find a job as an air talent is really challenging. So for the programmers and consultants, what do you think? What is it looking like? Is it really voice tracking? Because I'm voice tracking 2 stations now. And what do you think the landscape looks like, and what are you looking for talent?
Joel, why don't you jump into that one?
Well, finding new full-time air talent in stations, I think it's just not there right now. Mm-hmm. I'm hoping that and I'm just being honest here, I'm hoping by spring and summer, when the economy gets better and things loosen up, that we'll get some more bodies in some of these stations where we have lost bodies. But there are, and maybe you're doing this, but there are these services, like we were talking on the call with Bill and Gary last week about, there's a service called Virtual Jock. I don't know if you're aware of that. United Stations also has a service where they're, in fact, they just made a whole announcement that Tim Richards is involved with that. And Tim's a pretty good programmer. That they're going to be doing the virtual tracking. So I think there's a very strong market for that. I really do. And maybe that can work out for you.
Yeah. And I might, if I could, I'd like to ask Jeff Baird up in Eugene. Jeff, we're going through a little bit of that right now, looking for talent. As a PD, as an OM, what do you look for?
And just, a 5-second thumbnail of what's going on here. We had a morning show, 2 ladies in the morning that I actually hired about 12 years ago. And we had their show, did great. One of them decided that she wanted to go into real estate full-time. She'll be doing that at the end of the year. And the other one was just kind of left there. So rather than try to do this nationwide search and try to team her up with an additional partner, we decided we would just go ahead and bring in another show. And we actually found Chad and Christy from Detroit. And they start in a couple weeks. And they'll be doing the show live here for a couple weeks, and they're going to go back and wrap things up there. But it initially started out as a voice tracking conversation. And quite honestly, we were able to put something together, and with the help of Gary, we're more than excited to get this going. So I do have additional day parts that I'm looking at filling, and I'm trying to figure out, we're just in a weird spot. Do we hire someone, bring them in, all this to fill the day part? Do we just kind of bridge the gap with voice tracks? And quite honestly, there's nothing like a live person in the building.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I was on my last station for 21 years. Like I 3 different formats. I did talk with Sebastian, and then it was dance and oldies, and then it was hip hop. I did hip hop for 17 years. So I was at this station for 21 years, 3 different formats. And so now it's like, ooh, trying to figure out how to spin it and to really pivot into the next thing is really difficult. And there's no one really to talk to, except it's great that I have Gary. Gary's, a friend. And so it's interesting that voice tracking is tough, I think.
So if I could, I just want to run over to Paul Larson, who is our representative from our neighboring Canada. And Paul, kind of give us a little rundown on what's happening in Canadian radio. Because I've always found Canadian radio similar in many ways to here in the States, and in other ways very, very different. So what's happening up in Canada?
Yeah, no, thanks, Gary. It's similar but different. I think the biggest difference is we have far fewer stations in the markets, so the business is a lot more viable from the sense that there's less competition in terms of number of stations in a market. So, I mean, that's helped us through the COVID pandemic for sure. I think another big difference between the 2 countries is just how COVID's impacted the 2 countries. I mean, it's definitely impacted Canada, but whether it's our political system that's different or our medical system that's different, we're in far better shape in terms of COVID. So there's no question, March, April, May, even the national big groups were down 50, 60% in revenue. But as I'm watching the reports come out from the publicly traded companies, some of them are back to pre-pandemic revenue. I saw a company yesterday that is running 25% ahead year over year in revenue. So, it is a bit of a different situation. When you're talking about talent, we were talking about how listeners are turning to the radio for comfort. And one of the big mistakes that I've seen so much is eliminating the talent. I mean, the listeners are going there because they want the comfort of their talent. And I know it's the biggest expense line and it's the easiest thing to chop, but we have done everything possible to find every discretionary expense other than talent to make ourselves still be able to survive through the pandemic from a business sense, but still have a product to deliver when the pandemic is over. So when you're talking about voice tracking versus live shows, we kind of took a hybrid, and we have stations where we asked the full-time talent, because they were working from home and had less expenses in terms of coming to the office and parking and stuff, to take a pay reduction because it would help them keep their job, but also help the station in terms of cash flow. And every single person, and some of them were substantial temporary pay cuts, like 50%. But as revenue started to come back, it was easy to bring those people back to where they were in terms of wages pre-pandemic. And in fact, the business model going forward, I don't know how many of them are going to come back to work in the studio. Many of the talent like working from home. The company's invested in outfitting them with proper equipment. So, we'd supply the laptop, make sure they had high-speed internet, good microphones, processing. So we looked after that as an expense, which was like $2,500 per talent. And they love it. They don't have to come in and deal with parking. They can kind of work their shift around their family needs and whatnot. And on a go forward, I think that's going to be a business model that a lot of us are looking at up here.
Yeah, it's funny. I think about that, Paul, and there's a part of me that goes, I could have the greatest equipment in the world, but there's that little part of walking in the building, going in the studio, and doing your show live that I think that it's easy to discard that idea, but I just can't imagine it being the same. Like if I had this big setup here in my office, and say, oh, it's 3 o'clock, I have to go on now, and the voice track or whatever, it's going to be that. It's kind of like, when the restaurant changes the recipe a little bit, and you go, I don't know what it is, but something's not the same.
Gary, as a voice talent who's worked nationally and worldwide for 30 years, the last 20 years, believe it or not, from this padded cell right here, and it took me a good probably 1.5 to 2 years to make the transition from walking into the Fox network building and doing all the stuff right there to creating the same, almost, it's not quite butterflies, but you guys know what I'm talking about. It's kind of like that extra layer of energy that just makes it professional. It makes it top level. And it's strictly a mind game.
Right. I want to jump over to Mark Shepard. Mark does Afternoon Drive on WBEB in Philadelphia, major market, big time, probably, arguably, we were the world's most successful AC station. And Mark, what's your story up there? Are you guys back in the studio? Are you at home? How's it going?
Well, personally, I and everybody that remains on the air staff at B101 continues to broadcast from home, with the exception of Jen and Bill in the morning. They were allowed back in the studio probably, I want to say, a few months ago, and they are the only morning show live in Philadelphia as part of Intercom. I tell you what, we've been pretty proud of what we've been doing here, Gary, on the BEB side. That's who I can talk about mostly, but OGL and TVY, because we have been broadcasting from our studio closets. I'm in my basement and doing a hell of a job. We really have been bringing it home. We did, BEB, obviously, when it comes to Christmas. We're the station everybody looks to for Christmas. And the numbers were good again this year. And we had to rework some things than we would normally do differently in the studio. But we made it happen. And then, I sit here every day and I have my Rodecaster board provided by the station. I've got my company laptop, and I can do production. I can do voice work. I can do anything I can in the studio. And that's just the way it is. It's just
now, Mark, are you live, or are you like tracked a break ahead or something?
I am voice tracked a break ahead. I try and stay as close to my shift as possible, but I try and voice track a few things ahead. And I've got plenty of opportunities to do some research and talk about timely things. But I think, Roberta, you hit on something before, and it was told to us a while ago, is that people are coming to us, especially AC stations, especially B101, people are coming to us for comfort. And music is comfort to them. And that's where we try to take what we have here in Philadelphia and create that theater of the mind where everything is okay. Now, we're not, if something comes along, we'll tell them to listen to our sister station, KYW. If a breaking news, we'll direct them there, because we're all one big family now. But we're this island, we're this oasis where they can come, and it's safe. You're good here.
But Mark, I got to ask you, okay? And I hear everything you're saying, about, I think radio in general is doing an amazing job on remote like that. But don't you kind of miss the rush of being behind that gorgeous board in that gorgeous studio and hitting that button and going, Phillies B1, and knowing it's going everywhere? You got to miss that a little bit.
Yes, I do. And I had the opportunity to come in for the month of December, because we do the Santa show. And I am the voice of Santa Claus for the Santa show. And, it's Santa Claus here. Hello, Merry Christmas. So that's me, Mr. Santa Claus. And so I had the opportunity, because I take phone calls from kids during that hour all through the month of December. So I had to get special permission to go in and do my show live from 6 to 7 throughout the month of December.
I really admire you guys. As a former jock, I don't know if I could do it. I needed to get those big cost Pro 4 AA's on and turn them up, and
There you go.
Hey, Gary, but let me.
Look at how close within reach they were. That's incredible. That's awesome.
Hey, that comes with 41 years of experience right there.
That's right. There you go.
Hey, Gary?
Yeah.
Let me go in a different direction.
Yeah, Jay, go ahead, Jay.
The business evolves, and we've just got to get used to it. What's happened in our business is no different than what's happened in every other business right now. The way I've described COVID-19 is it took 10 to 12 years of evolution, and it condensed it into 3 months.
Yeah.
This is where life would have been in 2030 or 2032. Significant portion of the population working remote. That's what computers and the internet and everything, that's what it did for us, and we've been moving in this direction. It took the evolution. And so I'll go back to Nancy's question, and my advice to you would be is figure out how do you set yourself apart. What's happened with voice tracking, and not with the people on this call, but in general with voice tracking, it's become more of an assembly line than a creative experience. Okay, when I was there at the beginning of voice tracking, a lot of people think J-Core created voice tracking. It didn't. The voice tracking essentially was created by actually Triathlon Broadcasting when they voice tracked from Lincoln to Omaha using the original Prophet systems, like in 1994. It took 27 minutes for the track to get from Omaha to Lincoln. Okay,
so that's who we can blame for it, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. But what we did at J-Core is that we essentially figured out how to use it on a company-wide basis. But the voice trackers back then were different. They actually prepped for their show seriously. And this is like with the way the internet was in 1998. You know, they'd be on 2 hours before their shift. They'd be reading the newspaper online. They'd have a call with the program director in the market saying what's going on in the marketplace. So if you want to set yourself apart, look at it in that way. Like, how can I make this as good as it would be as if I was having the Gary Berkowitz experience of being in the studio, wearing the headsets, making it happen. If you can figure out how to do that, you will set yourself apart from a lot of the people that are offering the service.
I want to work in Canada.
You know, Roberta, Roberta, I think you wanted to jump in a minute ago, yeah?
The struggles that I'm really seeing are not from the air talent. It's from the programmers and the marketing people, where there's nothing that can replace sitting in a room or sitting around a table and going, okay, now we got a contest coming up. How are we going to make this cool? And I see on the TV side, I voice a lot of TV stations as well as radio, and Promax, which is the one of the big TV marketing and promotions organizations. This year, they're creating a number of online events to replace at conventions. You know, when you get a bunch of TV or radio people together, the cool stuff happens in the bar, the lobby bar, or in the hallway outside the convention room, where you're meeting people that, oh my God, I used to work with the guy that is your boss. And that's been lost. And so what Promax is trying to do is to create virtual opportunities for that kind of brain, mind meld. That's where those are the people that I see suffering. The air staff are going to be fine, because whether I'm in a booth in an apartment or, in a gorgeous room at a radio station, I'm still sitting in front of a mic talking to people and hopefully, connecting.
I'd like to just jump to Lou and Smokey for a quick second, because you're both on the sideline at the moment from day-to-day radio. How are you guys viewing radio now that you aren't necessarily, in it every single day? You're like citizens now.
Well, it's great. Retirement is great with a capital R. I love it. I'm saddened by the state of radio in a lot of ways, and I will tell you this: that I have a 25-year-old daughter and a 27-year-old son, and they don't even remember the last time they actually listened to a radio station. And from that standpoint alone, it scares me, because I don't know, I'm really out of it now, on a day-to-day basis. But it scares me as to what are programmers, what are corporate groups, how are they attacking this issue? And Gary, you have access to all of the numbers with your consultancy, so you can see what's going on in the demos. But what's a 25-year-old who's not listening to the radio? What's that going to do 10 years from now, 5 years from now? And that really bugs me. And I actually was one of the things I wanted to bring up. It doesn't necessarily, reflect on your particular question, but that's something we can throw out later. As for me, I'm just doing this little internet radio station because I started out in 1969 doing a little bedroom radio station, and I've really sort of just made one big ass circle. I'm not playing 45.
Well, that's what that smell is. Oh, okay. I was just wondering.
Well, so I'm not playing 45s, but I'm moving them out. So it's fun. And what I like the most about it is for us, a lot of us in radio have always dreamt about having our own radio station. And to me, having this little internet radio station, providing that I can do whatever I really want with it, is fun. And luckily I'm able to do it and can pull it off. So Fred, over to you. What do you say?
It's funny. I live up near the Canadian border, and Paul, there are vast differences between the musical construct of American and Canadian radio. I listen to all my stations out of Vancouver and Victoria now because I'm so bored with American radio. I just wanted to hear something a little bit different. That's when I listen to the radio. My go-to radio station in the car right now is Virgin Radio out of Vancouver. I think it's an interesting adult version of top 40 radio that I can wrap my ears around. So that's good. I'll say that. I think American radio has become flat and uninteresting. The need for radio to be deliverable, desirable, and memorable still exists, no matter where you get it. I mean, the box that we call the radio, like Jay said, that ship has sailed. You're not going to see radios for sale. It's just not going to happen. So let's just get away from the idea that the AM/FM radio is a box for the future. It's not. It's clearly a box for the past. Go on, look at the blogs and all the Facebook groups of all the people who used to do radio. I remember when radio, blah 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 blah. The best memories are the memories, not the ones you're going to create for tomorrow. But what are we going to do to create tomorrow's memories for radio? Because that's important, regardless of delivery. If you want to hear something today, after we finish the call at 5:30, they're going to replay the sign-on from 25 years ago of WKTU2, the second KTU in New York. Listen to it. They're going to air it as it aired that day, 25 years ago. And then this weekend, dial up either Riff in Detroit, WRIF, or KISW in Seattle. Both those stations are having 50th anniversary celebrations. And listen to what goes into making a brand memorable. It's not a lot of the chatter and the chattel that we throw on the radio today. Live, voice tracked, whatever, the same songs over and over. It's something a little bit different. And for AC radio, I'll speak to that for a second. That format has become the least interesting format for me, and it's what I've been doing for the past 25 years. It's so disinteresting because there's nothing about it that moves me. There's nothing emotional about it. Well, I think there's a case to be made that maybe it's time for something a little bit different. Remember, now everyone has the opportunity to curate their own radio station. They don't need you or your company or your VP of programming to tell them that somebody enjoyed 7 seconds of Love and Touch and Squeezing or whatever. It's just not that important to them.
So obviously, Smokey, you've seen my balance sheet.
But what's true is that take today for instance. All right, right now today. If you're looking at the state of AC radio, it's clear that the thing that seems to bind most of the AC listeners together is their momness. What to do with kids at home, what to do with their careers. So I don't hear that on the radio. I'm not hearing that in the music. I'm not hearing the moment reflected. Mary Wilson of the Supremes died yesterday. We're not going to go drag the Supremes playlist out, but I think it will be cool to play Someday We'll Be Together by the Supremes today. and say, hey, you know what? She was one of the girls that sang with Diana Ross in this group. She passed away yesterday. It was on every news service, no matter where you look. So it deserves a mention. It deserves a nod. Why didn't people play Hungry Heart by Bruce Springsteen on Monday after Springsteen's Jeep commercial? You know, how come Alanis Morissette's You Learn isn't on AC radio? Oh, it doesn't test as well. It's ironic. You know, if we program our radio station for what works in 7 seconds, we're never going to get them to listen for 20 minutes. We've got to be more interesting than what we are. And right now, a lot of it's not real interesting.
You know, Fred, I want to jump in and take your case a little bit further. And Gary, I really admire all the wonderful things you've done over the decades with your consulting firm, and especially in the AC division. And you always are touting the hits, play the hits. Well, the most popular show I do on Hound Radio, my internet station, is Sunday night at 9 o'clock. It's the only hour I go live, and it's called Sunday Night Stiffs. And I'll send you the promo that I'm running on it. I don't have to worry about music tests. I don't have to worry about revenue generation. I don't have to worry about anything. I got a handful of listeners. And I have fun with this little hobby. But that I wanted to bring up is because it's something totally different. Did I have to explain a little bit at the beginning of the show, starting in May, what a stiff is? Well, yeah, I explained it. And in the promo, I explained it. So I just wanted to mention and follow up with what Fred's saying, that you have to do something different.
And qualitative versus quantitative, I mean, corporate doesn't like to take any risks. And so we have to surf that fine line of how creative do we want to be and how random do we want to be. And it probably is something where you crawl before you walk to see how it articulates in the numbers eventually. But we have to do something. That's what distinguished radio stations back in the good old days from each other, is that the one, you know, you listen to the Snow closings, and on the other one you could listen to Barbra Streisand, and the other one maybe Zeppelin or something.
Yeah, you know, I had a real I'm sure a lot of you have kids. I had a real moment recently with my youngest. I've got 3 kids, and my youngest lives out in LA. And of all my 3 kids, he's probably the closest to me. He has my personality, and he has my drive. And at one point, he was thinking about maybe getting into radio, but he's become kind of a student of my life. He finds all these air checks all over the internet of my days back in Providence and whatever. So a couple of months ago, actually, he calls me up one day and he goes, Dad, oh my God, Dad, I just found an air check of you from Pro FM. And I was saying, okay, here we go. I'm going to really, get, hey, Gary Berkowitz, Pro FM. He said, no, Dad, it was really good. He goes, God, he said, Dad, you were so good. And that station was unbelievable. And I went, yeah. And I'm like waiting for it. He said, it's really too bad radio isn't like that today, because maybe if it was, we'd listen. And that I got off the phone with him, and I was like, wow. And I've listened back to that air check like a lot. And I try to sometimes but suggest that kind of approach. Not always met with success with it, but it was pretty exciting and pretty, compelling radio.
What was in that bottle that made Pro FM so special? What was that juice?
Oh, God, it was just a combination of energy, excitement, and I think everybody who worked there, every time they opened the mic, they just knew that they were on the happening thing at that moment. And
regional radio was informing that from years gone by. I mean, when you look at all the Boston stations, New York stations, Hartford, I mean, regionally, it was connecting with its listeners and taking, measured risks.
Yeah, and it was that, I think, I grew up, Smokey, I grew up in New York with WABC and WMCA, and those 2 stations were, WABC was certainly pretty heavily formatted, but you didn't know it because somehow or another they got around all that, and every jock on that station had their own unique personality and their own, special way of doing something. And so to answer your question about what was in the bottle, I was always if they used to not make fun of me, but people would say if Rick Sklar had a liner on WABC, Gary had it on Pro FM about 13 seconds later. I remember once driving down to New York on a weekend, and I have WABC on. I'm on 95 South, and I hear the top hour. I hear, there's always a better song on WABC New York. And then you hear the jingle, with Fan Ingram, blah, 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 blah. I went, oh my God. I actually pulled over to the side of the road, went to a payphone, and I called whoever was on the air, and I said, I want to change the top hour ID now. And there's always a better song on Pro FM was on the air like the next hour ID. So it was that excitement. It was that controlled chaos. Maybe was in the bottle.
That's such a good point. And what I wonder often is how we've lost that. Like, how did we become so genericized? Because back in those days, like you said, the stations were tightly formatted, but they had personality. Like the station itself had personality, and each personality had their own personality. But it all came together in a package that was exciting and had some life to it. And I watch just for fun. I watch Broadway Bill Lee's videos when he's hammering out his intros and stuff. He's doing them from his apartment in New York now. He's got the same energy, the same focus, the same fun, the same drive. But he's one in a million these days. And a station like CBS FM, still when you listen to it, I listen to it, we have to get a VPN thing on our phone here so we can get US IP addresses because you guys all block your radio signals from coming to Canada. So we have to figure out creative ways to be able to listen to stations. So I got this VPN on my phone so I can listen to the usradio.com app in Canada. And I walk through the neighborhood listening to CBS FM in New York because that station's got still some personality. And I just wonder how we've really lost that over the years and become so flat and generic in so many ways. But
because there's two really big companies, I think. There's Entercom and there's, iHeart. And I think they both have formulas for what they want their air talent to do. And they got rid of so many really talented people. And I feel like it's watered down. And there's a lot of really talented people on the beach.
But there's nothing compelling to listen to on radio so many times. I can listen to music anywhere. It's the stuff in between the music. And I think maybe because I'm in radio, I'm like that. But I think a lot of people are like that. It's if there's compelling content other than music in between the music, that's what gives us a reason to listen to a radio station instead of Spotify or Apple Music.
I think what you're talking about, honestly, is the water cooler effect. Earlier, we were talking about how can we, in a digital world, kind of recreate the subtle passing on of the baton to the newer team members. And in the good old days, you guys, we had the on-air studio, we had the production studio, we had the coffee machine, and that's where the real passing of the baton happened. And we just don't have that anymore.
Yeah, and Dick, I think that's an important part of this thing. There was something about the and Jay, I'm with you. It's never going to be again. But
I wish it was. Yeah, I wish it was.
I would give anything to be able to staff a radio station live 24/7. Like we used to do, because there was that little bottle. When you walked in that studio, it was like you were the king of the world.
It was magic. The truth of the matter is, if you look at it coldly, the fact is, we as an industry helped along the way. Nancy, I get it. It's really easy to blame the corporate and everything like that, and there's a lot to that. The bean counters running the business, and it's absolutely there. There's a lot to that. But the other thing is, we as an industry have sort of created it. What happened to those great top 40 radio stations of the 60s and the 70s? It was FM music stations with 4 breaks at 2 units an hour and a lot of segues. People always ask me, God, didn't you love being in the air? Why did you come off the air? And I said, some idiot consultant came up with the line, we don't talk over the intros of your favorite songs. And I figured, well, why bother anymore? You know what I mean? It's like that was part of the excitement, was the jock would get into the music and the whole thing like that. Well, we formatically moved again, and the industry has always chased the next thing. And so the next thing suddenly became MP3s and then iPods and all that, and now Spotify and Pandora and everything like that. And so what's happening with the big companies? They're chasing to make sure their radio stations sound exactly like that they're that people are apparently listening to now. So they want to go chase that kind of a situation. So it's again, this is bad evolution, and someone at some point maybe takes a chance and goes back tries the other way and maybe has some success with it. And this is an industry of lemmings, and then everybody will follow them.
Right. Well, guys,
don't you think part of the that formula, or as Smokey, as you were saying, putting it in the bottle, if you think back to those stations, if you were lucky enough to have one station where it kind of had that magic, and maybe two or three, you're very fortunate. But it was back when there was just maybe one AM and one FM in that building. As soon as there were 6, 7, 8 radio stations, something changes within the walls of that building. And I think when you start multitasking to a point where, you're doing stuff it's the way the world's run today is, on 6 or 7 radio stations, you're contributing in some way. Some of that individual shine gets kind of buffed out of that whole process.
You need advocates. Yeah, you do. You need a team of advocates for your brand, or the brand evaporates. It's interesting. I worked in Phoenix for iHeart, and we had 6 of the top 10 radio stations. And it was magic because all these brand advocates, no matter if it was talk or country, or if it was, CHR, AC, all these great brand advocates and all these great brands together, and nobody wanted to give. Everybody was just fighting for their brand. It was great. And, and then you go to a situation where there's like a big brand and then a bunch of little brands, all different, very different. Yeah, I'm with you, Jeff. Yeah.
There's definitely a pecking order, and within the walls and within the market as well.
It's tough. Well, guys, I'm just looking at the clock, and we're a little bit over an hour. And I know I said this was going to be like between half hour, 45 minutes. We'll just talk radio, and I have the feeling we could probably go for 2 hours.
Order pizza.
Yeah. More importantly, Gary. Who was caller 9? That's what we want to know.
That's right. And you just won Domino's Pizza. But, I think this call proves one thing to me, that the passion that we all have as radio people is unbelievable. It's immeasurable. There's something that everyone on this phone call has in common, and that's our love of radio, and our love to, no matter what the circumstances are, make it as good as we possibly can. And I just want to thank all of you for being on this call today. Again, it was a 3 a.m. idea. And I didn't think anybody was even going to want to do it, quite frankly. And the response was just tremendous. I can't wait to watch it back. Again, I'll put it up on my YouTube channel, so any of you want to watch it back can watch it back. But
awesome.
It's so good. If I could just personally for a second just say, to see all of you. I know most of you for a long, long time. And having you all here for me has really been very, very special. I thank you for doing the call, and maybe we'll do it again soon.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Gary.
Absolutely.
Well, there you have it. 15 radio professionals from all walks of the radio industry talking about some very, very interesting subjects. Now, if you were not able to watch the entire video, I did tell you up front that I was going to give you a summary. So let's do the summary right now. We talked about many different subjects. The first was, does AC radio need to become more of a passionate format versus a background format, more of a passive background type format? A great conversation revolving around that. Radio needs to embrace technology quicker. some of the comments were that sometimes we're a little bit behind in embracing this new technology. Mostly the discussion revolved around Alexa and how we could have gotten onto Alexa a little bit earlier. Is radio adjusting the message in times of COVID? And the answer was a resounding yes. Roberta Solomon mentioned that many of her clients' copy now contains messages of positivity and familiarity. One of the things Roberta said was that the stations feel, her voice is a constant and a familiar constant to many of their listeners. We talked about finding a job these days, and is it better to try to find a job as a voice tracker or an actual in-person on-air talent? I think everybody agreed finding a job is challenging these days. We had a representative from Canada on the call, Paul Larson, and Paul was saying that basically what's going on here in the States is going on up in Canada, but it's a little bit different because there are far fewer stations up in Canada. And Paul also mentioned that he agreed that radio is really all about personalities and talent, and he can't understand why so many of these people are being let go. Despite COVID, radio has figured out how to get the job done. We spoke with Mark Shepard at B101 in Philadelphia, and Mark was describing how they're all homebound, but the station hasn't lost a beat. A great conversation about that. Radio needs to be more interesting. We cannot depend on a 7-second hook to make it work any longer and get 20 minutes of listening. I think that subject could be a video in itself. And doing it live in studio versus voice track, which is better? I think everybody agreed live in studio was better, but that the way we used to do things may never happen again. So that's just about it for this Zoom call. I want to thank everybody who showed interest in being on this call. I mean, I had a massive turnout, and we only went with 15 people, which I thought was a good group to have a pretty clear conversation going on. I'm hoping to do another call, and I will put all the information on my social media as to how you can get involved and be on that call, so keep your eyes open for that. Just a couple of little things I wanted to mention. A little shameless plug here that if your radio station is experiencing some problems and you need a little bit of help, please reach out to me. I'll have my contact information at the end of this video. My newsletter is complimentary. You can sign up for it anytime at GaryBurke.com. So again, I'll be putting the word out very, very soon about the next Zoom call. I certainly hope you'll want to be on board for that one. I'm AC programming consultant Gary Berkowitz, and as always, I do appreciate you watching.